Imagine, it's 1971. You're one of a handful of elite engineers working with ARPANET, the great-grandparent of the Internet. Room-sized computers hum around you. Suddenly, on your teletype, a clunky typewriter that serves as a monitor, a strange line crawls across the screen. "I'm the creeper. Catch me if you can." It's not a command, not an error. It's a message. What does it mean? Who sent it? And how did it even get onto your terminal? That's the secret we'll uncover today. ARPANET was nothing like today's internet. It was a closed club for 20 to 30 universities and research centers. Everyone knew everyone. There were no passwords in our modern sense, no firewalls, no real security. It was a digital village where all doors were open because no one imagined someone might enter uninvited. And then, in this village, the first ghost appeared. This was an environment governed by the unwritten hacker ethics of MIT. Information should be free and access to computers unlimited. The idea of intentional harm simply didn't fit into this paradigm. This event raised three questions that stumped the best engineers at the time. First, was it an attack or a prank? Second, who was behind it and what was their goal? And third, the most crucial, how was this even possible? How could a program travel between machines on its own? The answer to that question changed everything. The mystery didn't last long. The author was Bob Thomas, a programmer from BBN Technologies, the very company that built ARPANET's key components. But he wasn't a villain. He wasn't trying to break anything or steal anything. He was trying to solve an elegant engineering problem that just got a little out of hand. BBN wasn't just a contractor. It was often called the Third University, after MIT and Harvard. Their engineers physically built ARPANET, creating the network's first modems, the IMP, or Interface Message Processor. So, the creator of this virus was one of the network's own architects. Now, pause for a second. Imagine that right now, on your smartphone screen, over this video, text appears. "I'm here. Catch me." Not a push notification, not a message, just text. What's your first reaction? Fear, curiosity, annoyance. This exact mix of emotions was felt by Creeper's first victims. In reality, Bob Thomas wasn't trying to solve a security problem, but a convenience problem. Before him, for a program to run on another machine, it had to be physically copied, transferred, and manually launched. His idea was brilliantly simple. What if a program could travel on its own? Imagine that to send a letter, you had to carry the mailman to the mailbox. Thomas figured out how to teach the letter itself to find its way. Creeper wasn't a thief. It was a digital nomad. It would find the next computer on the network, copy itself there, ensure the copy was alive and well, and then erase itself from the previous machine. It left no traces, broke nothing, and stole nothing. It was a clean, elegant movement. It worked thanks to the features of the TENEX operating system, which was on most ARPANET machines. The algorithm was simple. Find another TENEX machine on the network, establish a connection, and transmit its code. The key point, Creeper didn't replicate, it moved. One copy, one moment in time. And it didn't hack the system. It used the standard RSEXEC protocol, designed for remote command execution. It was like a door with a sign saying, "Come in, do what you need to do." Thomas was simply the first to realize he could send not just a command through that door, but an entire self-sufficient program. So, the code was written. Bob Thomas launched it onto the network. At first, nothing. Silence. Perhaps the theory was wrong and the code was a useless string of characters. But then, on a neighboring teletype, with its characteristic hum, the line began to crawl out. "I'm the creeper." It worked. His traveling program had come to life. At that moment, Thomas didn't yet realize that his elegant solution to an engineering problem had just given birth to the first network ghost in history. But what was happening to the machine itself? For the giant DECP-DP-10 computer, this wasn't an attack. It was an anomaly. The processor simply received a batch of instructions it wasn't expecting. It obediently executed them. Print the phrase, find the next target, copy the code there, and erase the original. For the machine, this could be compared to an intrusive thought in a human. It wasn't part of the main computations. It simply arose in the processor's consciousness, demanded immediate execution, and then vanished without a trace. Initially, Creeper was just an annoyance, a funny glitch. Engineers saw the message, shrugged, rebooted the terminal, and returned to work. But the ghost was persistent. It kept coming back. It appeared on different machines, at different times, interrupting debugging and computations. And very soon, this harmless game would require a serious response. After all, if a harmless ghost could wander through the open doors of the digital village, what would stop someone far more dangerous from entering? But this first digital intruder didn't race across the network at the speed of light. It was slow and methodical. It could sit on one machine for hours before making a jump. However, the ARPANET at that time consisted of only about 23 computers. The epidemic unfolded on the scale of a single university lecture hall, where everyone knew each other. This made the whole affair almost a family matter, turning a technical glitch into an element of digital folklore. The initial reaction was predictable: annoyance. Imagine you're debugging complex code, and your teletype suddenly starts printing nonsense. But behind the annoyance came technical curiosity, even respect. How did it do that? Whose code was so elegant? No one panicked. No one demanded the network be shut down. In the MIT culture of those years, this phenomenon had a precise definition: a clever hack, an elegant, non-trivial solution. It wasn't an insult. It was the highest form of praise. And the phrase, "catch me if you can," wasn't a threat but part of this game. It wasn't, "I will destroy your data." Not "pay me." It was a direct challenge, like a children's game of tag. Bob Thomas, in essence, was telling his colleagues, "Look what I can do. Now, try to stop me." It was a dialogue in the language of geeks, understood only by a small circle of initiates. Let's introduce a hypothetical threat scale. If a modern ransomware virus paralyzing hospitals is a 10, and the Morris worm, which crashed the internet in '88, is a 7, then Creeper on this scale is a 0.5. Its only real damage was the inches of paper wasted on the teletype and a few seconds of an engineer's lost time. Moreover, Creeper was a very raw experiment. Sometimes it would just crash on one machine. Sometimes it couldn't erase its previous copy, creating a useless duplicate. Occasionally, it would jump to a computer where it already existed and effectively destroy itself. It lacked complex error-checking logic. The code was written on the principle of, if it works, great. This made it not a weapon, but rather an unpredictable digital poltergeist. But the game dragged on. And while Creeper was harmless, it set a dangerous precedent. The network was vulnerable. And then another genius from BBN, Ray Tomlinson, the man who had invented email just a few months earlier, decided it was time to put an end to the ghost. But how do you catch something that is constantly moving and has no physical body? The answer was brilliantly simple. To catch a program, you need another program. And Ray Tomlinson wrote that program. Yes, the same Ray Tomlinson who just months before had invented email and chosen the @ symbol for addresses. He wasn't some random engineer tired of glitches. He was one of the founding fathers of the digital world, a future Internet Hall of Fame inductee. His decision to personally tackle Creeper is like if today Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the World Wide Web, started manually writing code to fight comment spam. Tomlinson's idea was a mirror image. If Creeper was mobile code that searched for computers to leave a message, why not create mobile code that would search for computers to find and erase Creeper? He called it Reaper, the Grim Reaper. Tomlinson, in essence, created the world's first digital predator. It was specifically tuned to one single type of prey. Reaper became the network's first immune system. Tomlinson wrote the code and released Reaper onto ARPANET. The first war of programs in history began. Reaper also crawled across the network from machine to machine, but its task was to search. It scanned active processes, and if it found Creeper's code signature, it immediately erased it. But this war was invisible. No flashes on screens, no alarms. System administrators could simply see in the logs how a process named Creeper would first appear, and after a while, a Reaper process would appear, after which both would disappear. It was a quiet, elegant surgical operation to remove a digital anomaly. The hunt was short-lived. Reaper proved mercilessly effective. Very soon, messages from Creeper stopped. The network was cleaned. The first digital infection in history was defeated by the first antivirus in history. The game of tag was over. But Pandora's box had already been opened. And here's the main paradox. By modern definition, Reaper itself was a virus. It was a self-moving program that intruded into other systems without permission and altered them by deleting another file. The first antivirus in history was, in essence, a good virus. And this presents us with a choice. Whose philosophy resonates more with you? Bob Thomas, who created something new purely out of curiosity just to see what if? Or Ray Tomlinson, who created a tool to restore order and eliminate an anomaly? Are you a creator or a guardian, an explorer or a protector? There is no right answer here. The story of Creeper and Reaper is a perfect metaphor for progress. Every new invention, every breakthrough technology inevitably spawns its opposite, a tool for control or counteraction. Fire gave birth to the fire extinguisher, the automobile to traffic laws, and self-moving code gave birth to the antivirus. This was the first example of digital yin and yang. Creeper, chaotic, curious, a creative beginning. Reaper, ordering, protecting, restoring balance. Since then, the entire history of cybersecurity has been an endless dance of these two forces. But Reaper only destroyed the code. It couldn't destroy the idea. The most important thing Creeper did was prove that the concept of self-moving code works. And if Bob Thomas used it for a harmless game, other programmers, already in the 1980s, realized that this same technology could be applied for far darker purposes. Only 15 years passed. In 1986, the brain virus appeared, the first for the IBM PC, which already corrupted data. And in 1988, the Morris worm paralyzed 10% of the entire internet then in existence. The game ended. A real war began. The Morris worm infected about 6,000 computers, that same 10% of the network, and caused damage estimated today at up to $100 million. That's what the harmless game of tag turned into. So why was the first infection a game? Because its creator lived in a world where the concept of cyber threat didn't exist. He couldn't imagine that his elegant experiment would become a blueprint for digital weapons. This is a story of how brilliant ideas in the hands of other people can lead to consequences the author never could have foreseen. Now, imagine for a second a world where Ray Tomlinson didn't create Reaper. What would have happened? Perhaps Creeper would have remained a harmless prank, but it's more likely that someone else would have created its evil twin, and the vulnerable ARPANET would have collapsed before it could transform into the internet we know. Perhaps the first cyber hunt was a necessary vaccination. Perhaps Creeper and Reaper became the first stress test in history for a global network. They exposed a fundamental vulnerability in a safe, controlled environment. This allowed future network architects to consider protection long before the stakes became truly high. This story from the past is not just an amusing fact, it's a blueprint that explains how the world of cybersecurity works even today. And from this story, 3 specific lessons can be learned that will help you better understand digital reality and protect yourself. So here they are. 3 takeaways from this 50-year-old story that are more relevant today than ever. This isn't just theory, it's a practical security protocol. Lesson 1. Trust is a vulnerability. Creeper could only exist because ARPANET was a system built on 100% trust, on a gentleman's handshake. Today, the entire internet is built on the opposite principle, zero trust. The zero trust principle, articulated by John Kindervag in the 21st century, is essentially an official acknowledgement of the lesson Creeper taught us in 1971. On the network, by default, no one and nothing can be trusted. Trust but verify. That's not just a saying, it's the main law of digital survival. Lesson 2. Any technology is a weapon in someone's hands. Bob Thomas wanted to create a useful tool for remote task execution. He inadvertently created a proto-virus. This is the classic dynamite problem. Alfred Nobel invented it for construction and mining, but it instantly became a weapon. Technology is always neutral. Intent is not. When you look at new artificial intelligence, a drone, or a social network, the first question shouldn't be, what good will this bring? But how exactly can this be used for evil? Understanding this is the first step toward building defenses. And lesson 3, defense always lags. Reaper appeared only after Creeper. Antiviruses appeared after viruses. Protection is almost always a reaction to an already existing threat. Therefore, you cannot wait for an attack. You need to think like an attacker, predict attack vectors, and build proactive defenses. This is the difference between treating a disease and vaccinating against it. Waiting for an attack is like waiting for an epidemic to start washing your hands. Proactive defense is a vaccination given in advance, based on an understanding of how the virus might mutate and strike in the future. And this entire story, ultimately, boils down to one question. What was Creeper truly for our digital world? A brilliant breakthrough that pushed technology forward, or a fatal mistake that opened Pandora's box? Write just one word in the comments, breakthrough or mistake. Let's see who among us there are more of.